Okay, for people who are joining the live stream today, we are in the late stages of getting our database integration system ready for version 12 of Wolfram Language. I happen to be on a different computer today because I'm in New York City for once. So here we go. All right, what are the issues here? New entity class-like heads should probably never format their code. What do you mean that?
I mean, it's something that people type, not necessarily something that is returned. So,
but so this is obviously wrong. I mean, this is kind of silly. Do we have people here who represent enough of the entity world to be able to talk about this intelligently?
Yeah, me, Tony.
Okay, so what do we think we might do for these? I mean, this is clearly silly. This is clearly not going to work. So what do we think we're going to do for these? Tony, can you speak to that, please?
I don't have an immediate suggestion. The only thing is that we are trying to align some information, and in this case, no distinguishing information is left. So, but I agree that some more information would be nice.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we? Do we have somebody from design here? I mean, why don't we just have in this box? Perhaps what we can do is to have an elided version of this code. Okay, so for example, in this case, population 3, that's fine, we can do it. But if it got to be much bigger, we probably won't want to do it. But we can always have a ... there. So at least you have a fighting chance of seeing what's there. You know, a ... elision that is similar to what happens with short, for example, where we say, you know, range of 1,000 or something, and we'll see, you know, part of the beginning, part of the end. Am I making sense?
But Stephen, in general, an implicit entity class is something that is still fully editable. It's something that you wanna, you know, maybe you set the limit wrong. You didn't want to say population goes to 1. You wanted to say population goes to between 100,000.
Well, what are you arguing? Why don't you?
I am arguing that they should not format at all. I think that the input form is just fine because they are code. It's not like the named ones.
I don't think that's terrible. I agree. But then the question is, what do we do? Under what circumstances do they format? Maybe they shouldn't. Tony, can you speak to this, please?
Well, I agree with the suggestion. I think named entities and named entity classes should format because they have a nice label in general, while other things that you construct should maybe not format.
Okay, what about food?
I mean, my claim is that...
Wait a second. I want Tony to answer that question. What about food? What about this case? Well, so this case, we had a natural language version, so that was fine. So I guess in the case where there is natural language, we can format like this, which is what we planned, right? Tony, are you there?
But you could even get an entity class like that.
What?
I think.
Okay, listen. We've got a decision to make, okay? You're proposing that in this case, where I don't know how the input form for this case differs from this case, right? But this case cannot start spewing code all over the place. Am I making sense? Did you understand what I'm saying? Do I have to repeat?
Understood.
Tony?
But in my opinion, having the code floating, having the input floating around and for some time, it's not really a solution to the problem.
No. I'm going to explain what we need to do. Okay, this case is just fine. We worked on this extensively. This case is just fine. Obviously, that case, if I look at the input form for that case, I will see all kinds of stuff that is similar to what you're talking about now. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's similar to this, right? It's an implicit entity description. Am I making sense? Yes? Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay? So what I'm telling you is this can't format like this, right? Even if you want this to format without a special form, this one should not. Does that make sense?
I think technically there's not a big difference between the two. It's more the use case.
I don't care. I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. This case, somehow we managed to capture. Well, I don't know what happened in this case here, where we got this output. This output is really not right. We really should have some kind of mechanism. Is Michael here, by the way? Michael here?
No.
Can we see if we can find Michael, please?
Yes, I'm going to find it.
Okay, so, I think in a perfect world, we would keep as some kind of comment that to be able to label this output. Do you see what I'm saying, Tony?
Yes.
Because this output without that is pretty obscure. I mean, I don't know. This is somewhat reasonable with this here, I guess. Am I making sense to people? I mean, you can't have this suddenly splurf out this whole big mess here, and it'll get much worse than that.
So we have a partial solution that might be related for qualified properties. If you enter, for instance, Spain population 1990, there you can see an example of a qualified property.
Did this ever go through design?
I think we reviewed that together a year or two ago.
Doesn't look quite right to me. It really doesn't look quite right. That plus doesn't look like it's in the right place.
I took a screenshot. I'm here. It's Billy from Design. I'll discuss it with Jerry.
Okay. Okay.
So the idea in that case was that we have only the qualifier values listed. There could be many. And if we click the plus, we also see what the qualifiers are that they are attached to.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, okay, look, here are our choices in my view. It is not a choice to have, I mean, in the case where this gets really complicated with a composite entity type and so on, you're right, code is better, okay? If the thing was, but in this case, where it was generated from natural language, code is not better. Code is a big mess. Am I making sense?
Well, I think
you understand what I'm saying?
I think that a more valuable distinction is between the stuff that is the stuff that is entered by people and the stuff that can be returned by things. I mean, I think it's kind of an accident that you can do things with control equal. In general, you will not have an implicit entity value.
Where are we going with this? Where are we going with this? We're not going to flip a switch that will blow up all formatting, right? So that's not on the cards. But so first of all, for a composite entity type, I think we have no choice but to show the code. Do we agree?
Depends, because I think that when you're doing entity list, if you look at the documentation right now, it just looks positively horrifying. And it might, I mean, that's not something that you want to edit. You probably need to look at, well, maybe you have a recent enough version, but otherwise the one from CBS have outputs.
Okay, let's go on to CBS.
You have the links down of all of the pages.
It's in further down.
Yeah, in the agenda.
In scope. But also filtered entity class with second argument, you can see that it blows up horribly.
We should not have this, by the way. This here, we should not have this. Please remove that. Shall I do it right now? I just don't want this list here. That list is in documentation only. I'll just remove it.
Look, like some entities cannot be simplified. That entity list of extended entity class. This could perfectly well format as an orange blob saying Mercury, Venus, Earth, and so on. But I think maybe they should just have a different icon to signify that they're extended. And that's my proposal of the icons in the other notebook. But this is not something that you can edit and get something meaningful out of. I mean, the original entity class.
Yeah,
yes,
I understand. So this is a case. Okay, this is a case where it's a composite entity class, and someone on the live stream is pointing out that it's important to think about what happens when you copy paste into Wolfram script. Yes, I agree. Although I'm sort of hoping that a lot of Wolfram script will be written in .ws/ls files that are edited in the notebook editor, so that you will still be able to get all this nice formatting. But what you're saying here, this is the case where there's a composite entity type, but still a named entity that looks nice and that could be formatted with its name, so to speak.
I mean, in this case, right? We're only adding a property. Yeah, we're only adding
I got it. We don't need to repeat. That's the point, right? The point that you're making is if there is a clear name for the entity, this is a somewhat corner case where there happens to be a clear name for the entity that then you could format using that name, right?
But
is that correct?
No, I don't think that the name is the main distinction here, because you have database-backed entities that can be like the original ones, and they are not labeled. They will format with the canonical name, which might be something like a horrifying UUID. It will not give you any information either in input form or in a yellow blob, because they don't have labels. Tough luck. But there's no point in showing
so you're saying if the thing has labels, use the labels, right? That's what you're saying.
Otherwise, use the canonical name. This is what's happening right now.
In a yellow box.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're saying use the canonical name even in the case of an external database.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so the canonical name might be something kind of horrifying.
Sure.
In the case of an external database.
But it's not going to be any less horrifying in input form.
Right.
At least you're not repeating this whole extended entity class, which is the same for all of them, and it doesn't really add much information, but you need it in the input form, otherwise you cannot compute stuff.
Sure. What's your point?
My point is that these guys should all be yellow blobs, and then if you go to the other notebook, they should have a little icon that distinguishes whether they are extended, filtered, combined, or whatnot.
Okay,
Just
fine. But I'm. Yeah. But I guess my question is, under what are the precise rules for whether you get a yellow blob or not?
I think if the head is entity, you always get a yellow blob. That's my idea.
Okay. Even when the entity type is something completely composite.
Yeah.
And how much detail do you get in the case where you have a yellow box? How much detail do you get? Because clearly, right now, for those early examples there with the countries, you're getting, a rather inadequate amount of detail.
Okay, so my idea is that for single entities, you will get a label that's either, if the type has a label, it's the label, otherwise it's the canonical name, plus a little icon, and that's it. And so if you're doing something like aggregated entity class over continent, blah, 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 in the yellow blob, you'll get the name of the continent, because that's the thing you've aggregated on. And so they will all look different because they will all have different canonical names. You will not have all the details of whether if you have extended and then filtered and then combined and whatnot. You will not see all that. You will see only one icon, which is the outermost.
The thing is, Stephen, that you are a lot less likely to edit manually single entities than you are to edit entity classes. And that's why I think Carlos suggests this.
Wait. So you're saying if it's a single entity, do one thing. If it's an entity class, do what?
Then if it's a complex one, then you don't form it.
Because
okay, hold on. So what you're proposing is, whenever it's a pure entity, even if it's a composite type or even if it's a database-driven, name, yellow box it. If it is a class, only yellow box it if it is a simple entity type and simple entity class. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would go even further and not format the implicit entity class.
No, I'm sorry, that's not on the table. That's
okay, then yes, I agree.
That's not possible. We're not going to do that. That's really stupid, if I might say so. Come on.
Well, at least they should be flipped open.
We're not going to format that. We're going to have that be a piece of code. Don't be silly.
That's not implicit. I'm talking about the ones above. The implicit ones, I think they are cool.
Yeah, you're showing named classes.
Okay, that's what I said. That's what I said. I just said the same thing. Right? I just said if it is not explicitly named, if it has I said exactly what you were just saying.
Okay, so if both first and second argument are string, then we can also format.
However, that will fail. However, look at this. Okay, so this case, that is a pure entity. Why is that not an entity class?
Because that quacks like single thing. So
because we want to talk about when you ask how many calories are in a certain thing, you want a number. You don't want a long list of numbers when you ask how many calories are in a burger. So we want to do a coarse graining like operation.
Okay, and we are okay. Well, so that maps nicely into this, into this hypothesis then, that we can that we use a yellow box when it is a single entity. But I mean, various people have been trying to attack the idea that we ever use a pure entity as opposed to an entity class when things get composite. This does not. You're not going to try and change your mind about this one.
No. I still think that single entities should exist. And actually, I think that
this case. Hold on. Is this case solidly a single entity? Nobody is arguing.
That case is not only that case is solidly a single entity, but that case, now that we have aggregated entity class, there would be a better, at least from an algebraic point of view, footing to write this thing. So you could consider this a food entity aggregated on food type and added food type as properties. But let's not go down that road now.
I don't understand that. Then you'd want to describe this as an entity class, wouldn't you?
No. That's okay. So let's put it this way: if you take all the food entities and then group by food type and added food type, you'll get hamburger, hot dog, and so on and so forth. And so when you could consider every single one of these as an entity in a class of aggregated entities. So they still are single entities, but they come from a different class.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's keep going here. All right. So I think then the proposal is, if it's a single entity, we try to make it yellow boxed in some way, even in a case like this. So in this case, in the output here, what will we do? Would that output be open by default or what? Or do we just, I think for this version, we may have to punt on that issue, because I think we can't guarantee to nail that. But I think in the future, you're proposing this will be a yellow box because it's a single entity, but to make it not so obscure, we would open it by default. Is that your idea?
I would guess we could even get rid of the plus minus and have it just open all the time. Because I don't see...
Could this be a system setting?
To easily collapse...
No. System settings are a waste of time. It just
by the way,
I think this case. Hold on. This case is nice. This case is better than having the thing open.
Why is it plural, by the way? That's one food. That's one entity. That's been a major source of confusion, I think. That
Yes,
implicit.
it has, probably. Yeah. Why is that? Why is that? Michael, Tony?
It looks like a bug.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, fine. So maybe you can fix that. That would help. I agree that has made me confused for sure. All right, let's summarize what I think we should do. If there is a natural language summary, close it up and just use the natural language summary. If there isn't a natural language summary, open it by default. Make sense? Okay. Problems? Can we do that?
I think there is a problem with making the natural language thing sticky so that when you copy paste, it stays.
No, I what? When this is copy pasted, I can't believe that's a problem. What's the problem?
Click the check mark. Now copy paste it. Or oh, okay, I'm wrong.
Yeah,
But if you evaluate it, it goes away.
It'll be fine.
That one is not in the
What?
input form.
If you evaluate it, it goes away, I think.
Of course. Yes, of course. That's what I just said.
Well, it could be cached.
I said when no. I understand it could be cached, but I don't think we necessarily want to do that. But I don't think we want to do that because otherwise we will not have a canonical form. If we had, hamburger with, French fries, we want that to canonicalize. We want that to evaluate to the same thing as hamburger with fries. Make sense? Okay, so the thing I was saying, I think, is exactly what we should do. That is, if there is a natural language form, use the closed up version with the plus sign. If there isn't, use the opened form. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I think we should do. Does anybody object to that? No. Okay, then let's do it. Okay, with respect to entity class, can I repeat what I was saying we should do? Or do people understand and agree?
Can
Do
you
I need to repeat
again
it?
one time?
Yes, I'll repeat it. Okay, if it is a named entity class, like this, okay, whoops, that's not what I wanted. If it's a named entity class, then yellow box it. If it is in any way composite, don't. So in other words, if we said entity class country, then show code. If we say entity class country, population, arrow, take largest, 3 or something, okay, just show code. Don't do this. Don't do what they did here. Do you get what I'm saying?
Okay.
Now, that means we're retiring effectively this yellow box form. Am I making sense?
Yeah, but
Michael,
if we are
you
but still, if we decide to not yellow box also the core types, like say entity class country, then it's not clear to me whether it makes any sense to yellow box for anything.
No, I'm sorry. Would you listen to what I'm saying, please? What are you proposing that we do not yellow box this?
No,
That would be very.
No,
I
this is
think
fine, but
that's
you
the
also
case.
suggested to not yellow box things like entity class country.
No, entity class country open close list is effectively, it is not yellow boxed because it's the degenerate version of the one with rules. I mean,
But I'm saying when it is composite, don't use a yellow box because the yellow box is complicated and you probably want the code. I'm saying only when it is not composite, do that. Does that make sense, Leonid?
But Leonid's question is entity class country open close list. Does that format or not?
Entity class country. What does this do? I don't even know what that does.
It's all countries. No condition, basically.
So this is basically a core type. It's not, but you can also view this as a degenerate case of the filtered entity class.
Well, this is very buggy. Whatever this is doing, it's not doing anything sensible. I didn't even know this worked. I mean, what happens if I just do a single argument version?
It's invalid.
Nothing. Okay, well, why is that? I've never seen the null list case.
I think all also works in place of empty list.
Okay, but why are we discussing this corner case? I mean, are you asking should this corner case have a special yellow box formatting? Or
It's
what?
not quite corner case, Stephen. Because
okay, why not?
Because you can view it as also the entity class corresponding to the core type that you registered. And so
okay, fine. So what?
So do we want to yellow box it or not?
I think not.
I think there's an argument to do it, because you could make the argument that all we could say, I mean, we could certainly, it would be an easy argument to make that instead of giving an explicit name there, you could give all there. But as soon as you're giving blah, arrow, blah, and so on, it's, you know, it's using yellow box. It's not using yellow boxes.
I mean,
Did
honestly,
you get what I'm saying?
Leonid, I don't think we should get too hung up on this because it's not documented. You can use a string in place, so why would you dress it with all that anyway? So
I don't have a strong opinion. I just wanted to draw...
I think it would be reasonable to make that yellow boxed.
Okay, maybe we indeed shouldn't discuss that in all these details. I just wanted to draw attention to this particular.
No, I'm just agreeing with you. We should use yellow box in this case. I don't see why not. But this isn't right. Okay.
Yeah, also, probably the icon is wrong because the icon is showing.
Yes.
There should be all blue, I think.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. So it should indicate that it's all of them. Okay. So I think we've got some understanding there. So let's take a look at what you're talking about here.
So this is when you have a single entity.
This is the case. Okay.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Yes.
So
by the way, I have a pretty hard stop here, so we don't have a huge amount of time. So, okay, please let's continue.
Okay, so you have a single entity coming out of entity list, and the first argument is not just a pure type, a string, but it's something that is generated by a computation. I think we should indicate this in some way. Even if it's yellow boxes.
Now, what does the wait a second. In the yellow box, the name in the yellow box is based on what?
If it's present, the label property. If it's not present, the canonical name. And this has already been the case for built-in entities and in-memory ones. It's the canonical name is the fallback for the common name.
Okay, so wait a minute. So this case here, but I thought we were discontinuing people ever using single entities for this implicit case. I thought we would try to kill that.
I would hope they die, but what about food?
Oh, so why are we discussing what they look like?
No, because
if we don't want people to use them, why are we discussing
Stephen, the reason why I put that there is because I think that if you look at the icon, if you look at the icon I drew for aggregated, they are kind of the same thing. That's why I put it there.
What are you talking about? Do we want? I thought we did not want people to use implicit single entities as opposed to entity classes. Am I right or am I wrong?
Stephen, they represent two different things. Entity class G8.
No, answer the question I'm asking.
Okay.
So we do want people to continue using implicit entities as opposed to entity classes. Is that
depends
correct?
on the entity type. For some entity type, like countries, it is very unnatural to mix them and view them coarse-grained as one thing. For food, it's very natural.
And also, they're not the same thing.
Okay,
so the implicit entity class of countries with continent Europe will return a list when you get out of an entity property. The implicit entity will get a singleton aggregated value. So they don't behave the same.
Okay, so for example, if I do this, and then I say that thing, population, I will get the whole population of Europe.
Yes. No. You get, I guess it's the average.
What the hell is that?
I don't know. I've always found them utterly confusing. That's why I prefer using aggregated entity class.
Wait. That's totally stupid. I thought that every property had something that it did in a composite entity case. And population surely should not give the average.
Because this is like
Tony or Michael. Wait. Tony, can you explain what it's doing?
Yes, I'm looking that up. I might take a moment.
Okay, but
I
so
think
it is the case.
In general, if you view something as a single entity that is a multi-thing, you don't look at the total. You look at some kind of averaged object.
No, that's only. I mean, this is extensive versus intensive quantities in the physics world.
Correct.
And I don't think population is ever. I never remember which way around these are, but population. It's not like a density thing. It's like something where you count all the people.
Population is extensive.
Like calories of a chocolate chip cookie. You don't want 52,000 calories because we have 890 cookies.
Exactly.
It's definitely extensive property.
Okay. Well, so then what you're saying is, for a particular entity property, it is the case that the aggregator, the default aggregator, I mean, I think population would never want to be average. It would always want to be total by default.
You know,
I disagree with this, but
that's the beauty of aggregated entity classes, that you could even
I
decide.
don't care. The default should work correctly.
But the default, like nobody says kind of this is the total of all. This is the coarse-grained version of them. You have many little countries in front of you, and now you look kind of at an average version of it.
I don't think that okay, listen, the question is, if you are using an entity as an entity class, okay, describe, are you claiming that an entity is, I'm still getting this all mixed up, is the kind of average?
Yes,
Go
exactly. Normally it's an average. Otherwise you want to form an entity group to view it as one.
Well, so you're saying that this syntax, entity of country, is kind of a silly thing because it's suggesting that countries are some kind of homogeneous material.
It is silly for countries,
going to be average.
But if you have, say, a farm with 5,000 cows and you asked for the average weight of the cows, of course you want to average them all rather than getting a gigantic number for the weight of the cow in this farm.
I mean, I think there is an argument.
That's not clear to me. I would think if you were trying to work out how much the total, somebody was trying to figure out the, how much the farm is worth, they probably want to add up the cow. Anyway.
Correct. And then you don't want the entity, they want the entity group of all cows.
No, wait. I think that there are a number of possible things you might want to do. You might want to know the number of cows. Like, so you want to count the cows, you want to get...
No, but you're saying, if you say the weight, the question is, do you get the total weight of the cows or do you get the average weight of the cows?
Or what about the maximum weight or the standard deviation? All of those are perfectly valid questions.
No.
Yes.
Yes, but that's not what the question is the default. And I think what Michael is saying is the entity group, if you had the entity group of all cows and you ask for the weight, then you want the total.
Correct.
If you have the entity of all cows, it's like the average. You're saying that you are making the claim, which I don't think we've ever enunciated specifically before, that entity, as opposed to entity group, as opposed to entity class, I think, represents some kind of averaged thing, averaged over all the.
We discussed this
with
respect to food. That's the only viable option.
Well, I understand that, but with respect to countries, the homogenization of it is that's
it's much more questionable, no question.
Right. How do you actually, based on the question on the live stream, how do you change this to say, give me the total? What do I do here?
With aggregated entity class, you can do that.
No. Without aggregated entity class.
There's no mechanism currently to override the default aggregate function. That's why we now have this.
Really, I thought that was the attributes did that. In the old country data function, didn't the attributes do that, or isn't it part of the entity property mechanism?
I think there is an undocumented fourth argument that allows you to do that, but not for entity class. So you can say entity class, the same thing with entity class, and then you can say country population, empty list of qualifiers, and then total. But I don't think it will work with a single entity.
Doesn't appear to.
Well,
yeah, because you can apply aggregates only to classes of entities and not to a single entity.
But also, I mean, I think that all of this discussion and confusion we're having is because this single implicit entity is really an abuse of notation. And we
no, stop.
I
we just agreed that for food, you've got to have it.
No, you don't.
No,
if you have aggregated entity class, you don't anymore. You can express it with aggregated entity class.
But I agree with this statement, Carlo. But in general, it is unavoidable. Like when you already ask, say, in species, any species is already the aggregated version of many, many millions of individual animals.
Yeah. So what?
Or plants.
I mean, what I'm saying is that we're providing an algebra of types that you can use to construct species from individual animals, families from species, and so on and so forth. And if you are interested in for whatever reason you're doing data science and you're interested in the largest dinosaur, you do one thing. If you're interested in the average dinosaur, you do another thing. And using aggregated entity class puts this on a solid footing. Entity has a lot of implicit assumptions that are difficult to check, and so on and so forth.
No disagreement.
Okay, but then let's zoom out for a minute. Can we make a table, which we're not going to be able to do right now, of all the different cases of entity class, entity group, and what they do with respect to these aggregators? Okay.
Still,
can we do that, please? No, wait a second. I want to make sure we're doing that. Right, Tony, can you do that, please?
So there is functionality to retrieve them. It's not documented.
No, I'm not asking that. I simply want to know. I simply want to get a table of what it does right now, what the system does right now in those three cases.
Yeah. But there are basically two cases only. There's one case that handles aggregation, averaging, and the other case that handles grouping. The one is more average-like, and the other is more total-like. And if you have a single entity, you're having an average entity-like thing, while if you have an entity group, you're totaling them.
But by the way, all of that is only true if the type of the output is something like a number. I mean, if the output is a string, for example, or an image, none of that makes any sense.
But yes, so the default aggregate function is an identity.
I have to leave for another meeting, unfortunately.
Nothing.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. Okay, we're not going to be able to conclude this here because I also have to go fairly soon. Let's loop back here for a minute. Okay, you're proposing these cute icons for the case of entity. What's that?
Yeah, no, thank you for the cute. It's the first time I draw something.
Right. Okay, but in any case, you're proposing them for the case of not entity class, where you're proposing that we format as code, correct?
Yeah, but for single entities with a complicated first argument.
That seems like a corner case to me, but I mean, yes, I agree that what we're doing right now with single entities with complicated first arguments doesn't make a lot of sense. So, Billy, do you think you can make something like those icons work?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And they're two-color icons, which is fine.
I think the last one should be three colors.
Another case. What's that?
I think the combined one should be three colors. Now that I think about it,
whatever.
Because it's like combining two classes.
Tell Billy what you want. I think we can make that work. So there's another case, which is the all case, that we probably want another icon for. Right? The case, if I'm not mistaken, that was an entity class case. Sorry, that was a case never mind. That was this case here. Right, well, we definitely don't want that filter down representation there. Am I making sense? That's very similar to this case where we want, I would say we just use this icon, right? That red icon there in this case.
Yes.
Make sense? Okay, all right, let's have a quick look at the other things we're talking about here. What is this?
Okay, so when you have a database that has a lot of tables, you don't want to inspect them all at once because it might take several minutes, might return a huge thing that you don't particularly care about. So current behavior, which is the default of SQL Alchemy, which is the framework you're using under the hood, is to basically grab the whole connected component of the graph.
Yes.
Ricardo's proposal is to take only the single entity, but message a warning saying that we are dropping some links.
How would you get the connected component? Wait. How would you get the connected component in that case?
So we can have an option for that if you want the connected component. It's in the end of my proposal.
Okay.
But I think we are cutting bridges here because we're putting everything into relational database. So in order to do that, we need to have a function that is doing inspection and get properties, and so you can. What we had before, there was
that's what you had before, but we're not going to do that
right.
because it was a big mess.
It was not really a big mess. It was just that you couldn't find a name that was. What we want to do here is to,
Actually, I'd like to. Yeah. Okay. Before we get to this, there are a number of comments on the live stream that are interesting here. Seth is commenting on asking for saying that pre-release 4 has a messy version of database. Are you guys aware of this? And he's asking if there's going to be a pre-release 5. I don't know the answer to either of those questions, but do you agree with the claim that in pre-release 4 that the database functionality was messy?
Well, we were in the middle of renaming a lot of this stuff, and the documentation
okay, fine. There. Okay, so I don't know whether there's a pre-release 5 coming. I think there probably will be. Okay. Next comment. If you have a collection of food items, you don't want the average, you want the total. Yes. Okay. Since we have a functional language, why not have a default aggregate function that you can give to the entity class? Yes, I agree. That would be a reasonable thing to do.
Oh, that's what? Yeah, that's what aggregated entity class is for.
Yeah, but I think that. Yes, it is. Wait a minute. Okay, the question is it convenient enough? So for example, one could imagine another setup here where this says, wait, where this says something like aggregation function arrow total. Okay, what were you going to say?
Okay, what I'm going to say is this, type just below, aggregated entity class, and then say...
Why is it still blue? Why is it blue?
I don't know what version you have.
Oh, because I misspelled it. Fine. Aggregated. Never mind. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. First argument country, second argument is going to be population goes to total.
Okay. Then what? Then this one here?
Then just continent. Like that? Just continent. Third argument, just continent. And then, yeah, that's it. And then you can ask for the population of that open square, like percent.
No, I can't. That's not going to give me a specific continent. I want Europe, the European continent.
Okay, open. Dude, this is going to give you all continents. If you want to,
yeah, I know.
If you want one, you do the entity list or you filter or whatever.
I know. I rather like this type of thing. I don't know why we're not doing this type of thing as an alternative.
The issue is that for different properties, you might want different defaults, and then you get into a mess. How do you specify that?
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing that you can do if you want just Europe is you take that thing and you wrap it in entity, and you put that second argument Europe. That will work. It does work now.
Okay, let's look at these other things. And I really, unfortunately, have to go. Okay, so the issue here is whether to get the whole connected component or whether just to get the individual table.
And also, I think it's whether, I think we all agree on getting a single table, at least as a default. The question is, when for version
why
2...
why does this SQL alchemy thing not do that? Why do they think it's worth getting the whole connected component?
I don't have a precise answer. The problem is that you are getting with a database that is not complete. The moment you start dropping relation,
I understand that. I understand that argument.
Yeah.
So the way it works with SQL Alchemy is that they provide one function that can either inspect the whole thing or a connected component starting from some things, and then they have finer-grained methods for getting the signal information. So you can actually do both. They just provide different methods. Now, what I think is that the problem, we will have a problem when we write to a database. So if you inspect one database and then you want to reproduce it locally, so if you have inspected the database partially, you end up with something that is perfectly fine for reading, but it's not going to be good for writing. And so I think that the message should be issued on write time, not on read time.
By the way, Carlo, you didn't list my proposal here, which is a third one, which was to do lazy inspection.
We're gonna do it for this version, learn it for sure, and we need to.
Yeah, not for this version. Sure. Okay, so if we restrict only for this immediate version, then yes. But just to list it in principle, I think it would make sense to just mention it. If I may suggest, can we move this discussion about these dangling references for the next time? Or Carlo, do you think, or do you want the answer right now?
I have got to go.
I'm fine.
So unless you think there's an easy answer, I mean, to me, look, there's going to end up having to be an option to decide. I mean, this is basically, it's kind of like the include definitions options to various functions that say, do you want to, sort of kind of indirect through all the dependencies or not?
Right? Yeah. I do.
So sometimes it's useful to include definitions, and sometimes it isn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Question from Seth on the live stream. Oh, hold on. Question here: entity value of entity group. Does it always provide the total? How do you get, if you say entity value of entity group, can you get, for example, the median or the distribution of a property?
So for the case of entity group, there's also a default aggregate function for each property. And there's some undocumented syntax with which you can retrieve that function for each property. So
okay, but how do you change it?
If you can't change it, there's no syntax for it.
To have entity value, so okay, we need a separate discussion about aggregated objects. And whether, I mean, I understand that there's a mechanism here with aggregated entity class for doing this. The question is whether we also want to provide some simplified syntax for these other cases. Okay, I have to go, guys. To be continued. And unfortunately, we're going to need to follow up on this. All right, see you guys soon.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.